recording. And we're live. Hey everybody, Chuck Holton, how you doing? It's about 6:45 p.m. in Panama. And I just got back from several days in the Darian Gap. Now, I'm gonna, let's see if I can move this behind that one. Won't be as distracting. Okay, I'm glad you're all here. Thank you very much for joining. And I want to talk about helping these migrants. How should that work? As you know, I get confronted with lots and lots of different scenarios where people are desperate and need help. Sometimes they need help to get where they're going. Sometimes they need help surviving. Sometimes they need medical help. And sometimes they need spiritual help, as you saw last week when we were in Cartagena. And it's always kind of a question. I've talked about this a lot before, that we want to help people without hurting them long term. Seattle, Newton, North Carolina. Wow. Hello from Norway. Wow, I bet it's cold up there. It's probably cold pretty much everywhere. It's got to be colder than it is here. It's beautiful here in Panama. It's windy season. It's nice and dry. It's not real humid. We're up in the mountains, so it's about 75 degrees outside. Absolutely beautiful day. And so I feel for you guys that are up in the north getting snowed on all over the place. Sorry about that. I'm not sorry I'm not there, though. So, as you know, went down to the Darian Gap, and of course, there are thousands of migrants coming through the jungle. For those of you who are not familiar with it, the Darian Gap is the border region between Colombia and Panama, and it is some of the most extreme topography on Earth. It is mountainous. It is very tropical. Bugs the size of your face. Everything wants to eat you. Everything's got thorns. Everything's poisonous. There's lots of rivers in there. There's a swamp the size of Delaware. And up until recently, it's been considered basically just trackless jungle. Trackless because nobody went through there. The first time that I went down to the Darian Gap, there were checkpoints along the way, and the border police would check your passport and your driver's license and take down your name and your date of birth and your description and all this. And I was like, I finally, after about the third time, I said, why do you guys keep checking every 10 kilometers the exact same information? And they said, so we'll know where to start looking when you disappear. At that time, the FARC, the Colombian terror group, FARC, was operating in the area of the Darien, and so it was a very, very lawless area, very dangerous. There were missionaries that went in there that were never heard from again, and it was bad. And so when I got to the end of the road, well, the last checkpoint, they asked us, where are you going? And we had been looking at the map. We wanted to go to the very furthest point that you could get on the map away from the United States. This is the Pan American Highway. If you drive from Alaska, you can drive all the way down through Central America, and you'll end up in Panama, and the road ends in the Darian Gap. That's why they call it the Darian Gap, because there's a gap there. There's no road that goes on to Colombia, for good reason. And we wanted to get to the very end of the road. So it forks down toward the end, and one goes to a town called La Palma, and one goes to a town called Yavisa. And we had looked at the map and thought, we should go to La Palma. So we told the last checkpoint, the police there, we're going to go to La Palma, and they noted that down. Then after we got driving again, one of our guys was looking at the map and he said, I think actually Yavisa is the furthest point. So we should go there. And so, okay, we decided to change our mind and we went to Yavisa. And it was late at night. We got there about 9 o'clock at night. We pulled into Yavisa. It was like a Wild West saloon town. And we pulled in there and shut the car off, parked next to a gigantic truck with these massive logs they were pulling out of the jungle. And immediately when we shut the vehicle off, we were surrounded by border police with AK-47s in camouflage uniforms, and they arrested us. And we were like, what is going on? And they said, you're not supposed to be here. Nobody told us you were coming, so why are you here? Are you, drugs or what? And we were like, no, we just tourists. And they're like, no, tourists don't come here. We're like, well, we do, and we just wanted to see the end of the road. And they're like, come with us. So they took us to the police station, which looked like a, armed encampment. They had sandbag bunkers all the way around it, high chain link fence with razor wire, guys with machine guns in the bunkers, facing out. And we were like, what is going on? So they took us in there and they sort of interrogated us. And we just, we just wanted to explore and see what was down here. And they're like, yeah, no, that's not, you can't do that. So after a couple of hours, they determined that we were just idiots and not a threat. And so the chief of police came out and he said, look, FARC is constantly attacking this police station. That's why you see all the bunkers and sandbags and machine guns. And, so this is a very dangerous place. You should not be here. You can stay the night, but you have to leave at first light tomorrow and get out of here. And we said, okay, well, where do we stay? And he said, there's a hotel right down the street above the cantina. Just listen for the music. So we walked down the street, and sure enough, there's this, Panamanian típica music. Sounds like somebody's strangling a cat and yodeling at the same time. So it's kind of like, it's not really good music. And it was blaring out of this cantina. We got there and the top floor, the front of the building had fallen off. And so it was just like a pile of rubble. And you could see the hotel room because it only had 3 walls. One wall was open to the air. And there was no bed in there. There was just one hammock. And there was 3 of us. And we kind of looked at each other and we were going, I sure hope there's someplace else to stay around here. So there was a drunk guy stumbling out of the cantina. And I asked him if there was anywhere else in town that we might stay. And he said, well, they're building a new hotel down the street around the corner, and I don't think it's open yet, but if you knock on the door across the street from the hotel, the owner lives there and she might let you stay there. So we hustled down there. It was already like 11 o'clock at night. And even though it was that late and all the lights were off in the house across the street, I went ahead and banged on the door anyway because we were desperate. And after I banged on the door long enough, finally the door swings open and there's this tall black lady standing there, very pregnant and very topless, nothing on from the waist up. And she just was like, what? And we were like, hi, we wanted to see if maybe we could stay in the hotel. And she reached over and grabbed a set of keys and threw them at me and slammed the door. And they were the keys to the hotel, to the gate that opened the entire hotel. So we got our pick of rooms. We went upstairs. Thank heaven. It was a brand new hotel. There were brand new rooms and they had air conditioning. And it was so sweet. We were so glad. Right outside the front door, right outside the door of our hotel room that we chose was a bug. And I'm not kidding you, that it was a beetle about that big. I set my cell phone down next to the beetle and it was the same size as the phone almost. And he promptly crawled up on my phone and I think was either trying to call the Pentagon or mate with it or something. I don't know. But so that was our adventure the first time I went to the Darian. It has gotten better since then because they've developed quite a bit more going down there. And I sent you a video about your Chinese crossing the border. It was emailed. Please go look. Okay. All right, Jeanette, I'll go look. Thank you. I appreciate the emails you send me. You can get a hold of me at hotzoneholton@gmail.com. And while we're at it, I should mention that we have 2 trips. We have 3 trips going to Armenia coming up in May, June, and September. And we filled them up completely, but then we've had some cancellations. And so we've got a couple of slots open on the May and June trips. If you're interested in going to Armenia with me and my wife for 10 days in May or June, send me an email, hotzoneholton@gmail.com, and we will sign you up. It's going to be a great time. If you haven't been to Armenia, you are going to be blown away. It is absolutely like going to northern Italy in the Dolomites or going to Switzerland or someplace. But it's got this amazing history, incredible food, and it's a very economical trip. So anyway, get a hold of me if you're interested. So we're talking about these migrants. When I went down there the first time, they were saying that migration was a terrible problem at that time. And there were something like under 100 people a month coming across the border illegally and filtering into Panama. And that was a problem for Panama. They weren't prepared for that. People, again, you're not supposed to go into that jungle. It's bandits and bugs and diseases and things like that. So that was like 2007. Well, fast forward to 2023, they had more than 500,000 people come through the jungle from Colombia into Panama. And it has become a migration superhighway. It's become big business, is what it's become, because the people along the way have learned that there is a lot of money to be made in facilitating this flow to the north. Now, I always kind of wondered, what does a smuggler look like? How can you tell if somebody's a smuggler? I imagine this sort of nefarious figure, with a bandana around his head and gold chains and really slimy looking and bad teeth, What I've found is that there isn't one group of smugglers. A smuggler is anybody who helps these people get to their destination. And so there are taxi drivers, there are bus drivers, there are hoteliers, the people that give them places to stay. There are guides, there are Sherpas, there are people who give them food along the way. There are churches and governments that provide for these migrants to make their journey easier. And because of that, all of those people qualify as smugglers. Now, personally, I don't want to be a smuggler. And I am not positive, but I believe that it is at the very least unethical, if not outright illegal, for an American citizen to smuggle illegals into the United States in any step of the process. And so I've been very hesitant about helping these migrants in the ways that I would help people in other places where I go to tell the stories and I find people in desperate need. I have found, obviously, I go to wars and disasters around the world. And when you go to an aftermath of a hurricane and people have lost their homes and they are sleeping on the street and they have no food, or they need medicine or medical care, then I'll jump right in there. I'm very happy to help people like that. But when it comes to migrants, I'm a lot more circumspect about what I should do and shouldn't do when it comes to helping these people. Because yes, they may be in desperate need, and yes, they may be destitute. But I have to remind myself that these people made this journey voluntarily. You might say, well, they were driven out of their country by persecution and war and famine and disease and poverty. And I'll say, yes, however, virtually all of them have crossed multiple other countries where they weren't being persecuted or starved or attacked or anything like that before they got to where I run into them. And they plan to cross many more on their way to the United States. So that's a voluntary effort, and it changes them from a true asylum seeker to an economic migrant. And I don't feel as compelled to help people when really what they're coming for is a better paycheck. They're not as destitute as it sounds. They could stay right where they are, and they could make a life right there. Now, even in the Darian Gap, so a couple days ago, I went out to a place called Canan Membrillo. That is one of the villages that is the very first place that people come to after they have trekked through the jungle for several days. Now, Canan Membrillo is the easier of the two main places to get to. Hey, thank you very much, Fred. Is that Fred or Fowd? Paul. Gosh, I gotta need my glasses. Canan Membrillo is the easier of the two places to get to. The people who come through to Canan Membrillo go a different route that enables them to pay for more boat rides and in some cases even horseback rides through the jungle. And so they don't have to walk as far, and it doesn't take them near as long. Because of that, they are in much better shape by the time they get out of the jungle into Canan Membrillo. Once they get to Canan Membrillo, the worst is over, because from there it's a boat ride down the river to the road, and then maybe spend the night in a camp there by the road, and then get on a bus and move to the Costa Rican border. And from there on out, it's all buses, pretty much. A couple places where they need to walk a little bit, but not far. And it's much safer. So then it's mostly buses all the way to the U.S. southern border. So they're pretty much home free once they make it into Panama. The people that are at Canan Membrillo is 27 miles from the nearest road, way upriver, 4.5 hours in a little dugout canoe. And it was a brutal trip up the river, let me tell you. So the people who get to Canan Membrillo could literally stay in Canan Membrillo and make a life for themselves and have a better life than the place that they, quote unquote, fled from, whether that's Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela, Africa, Afghanistan, Syria, Somalia, Bangladesh, you name it. Okay? Thank you very much for the donations. Is that Celan? Okay, I can't read that. Celan, 1953. Very kind of you. Thank you very much. So, missed the beginning, catching up on 2X. Okay. So, Canan Membrillo is a tiny Indian village. And when I say Indian, I mean it's one of the indigenous tribes of Panama. There are 9 indigenous tribes in Panama. There's in the Darian, there are 3. There's the Embera, the Guna, and the Wunan. The Wunan have more of a presence kind of further toward Costa Rica, but there are some down there. The Guna are mostly along the rivers and the coastline. The Embera are mostly in the interior in the jungle. I say mostly, not completely. And what's weird is that they live next to each other, and they have for millennia, but their languages are nothing alike. I mean, nothing alike. There's virtually no overlap between their two languages. And it wasn't until the 50s or 60s that Westerners got in there and started to codify those languages and put them in writing. I actually met the missionaries who codified the Kuna language and then put the Bible into that language. And you imagine what a incredible, incredibly difficult challenge that would be, to show up someplace where people don't speak Spanish much. They have their own language, but it's not written. And so there's no way you can learn it except just living with them and just like spending time with these people and trying to figure out what's what. There is a process that they've learned. Wycliffe Bible Translators has learned how to do this. But it can sometimes take like 30 years just to learn the language well enough to write it down. And then you have to make up a written language to correspond to the original language because they don't have their own. And then you have to go about the process of translating the Bible into that language in such a way that will make sense to those people. So I heard one missionary say one time, the verse that talks about which of you, if your child asks for a fish, would give him a snake. And, being that the fish is tasty and good for you and benign, and at least not dangerous, and the snake is dangerous and venomous, and you would never give a snake to your child. But in their primitive culture, snake meat is highly valued as a delicacy, and fish are like, I really like fish. Who likes fish? And so if you just translated that verse word for word, it wouldn't make sense to those people because they'd be like, well, of course you would give your kid a snake if you had one because they're much better than fish. And so they had to sort of add and you can't change the script. You can't change the Bible. You can't turn it into something completely different. So what you have to do is put qualifiers in there. So you could say, which of you would, if your child asks for a plump, tasty, yummy fish, would give him an angry, venomous, spitting snake that would bite him and hurt him, something like that. So does that make sense? You could be the lucky recipient of, gifted memberships. I didn't know you could do that. That's cool. All right, whatever. So anyway, fascinating stuff when you talk about a completely uncontacted tribe. Thank you, Bewitched. Very kind of you. I really appreciate that. And thank you, TJ Breen. Wow, very kind of you. So when we talk about these tribes, these are very primitive tribes. The Mbera, we have some friends that live in an Mbera village that we went up there and helped their church. Well, there wasn't a church, but we helped establish a church in this village. They didn't have any Christians in their village. It was about 9 or 10 families that lived deep in the river, deep up the river in the Darian forest. And they live very primitively. They wear loincloths and they tattoo their bodies all up. The women run around topless. Everybody runs around pretty much naked. And they have dugout canoes and spears and that sort of thing. We went up there and started, loving on those people. They had a fire in their village and it had burned down the communal house that they all used for ceremonies and things like that. So we kind of helped them rebuild that, gave them a little money to rebuild some of the houses that had been burned down. There were some disabled children that had cerebral palsy in that village. You can imagine how hard it is when you don't have cars. You just have a canoe or you just have to walk everywhere. If they had to take those kids to the doctor, they had to take them all the way to Panama City, which is like 4 hours travel in canoe and boat. On foot and all this stuff. So we got them some like all-terrain strollers for those 2 kids and took them out there to them. And the witch doctor in the village was just beside himself that we had done that. And he actually became one of the very first Christians in the village. And after a couple of years of working with them, we found out that there's several families that had gotten saved and become Christians. And the chief of the village came to us one day, and he wasn't a Christian yet, but he said, we really like you Christians. We like having Christians in our village because before we had a lot of problems with drunkenness and abuse, and now we don't have that problem, and everybody gets along much better, and it's just a much better thing. And we're like, Yeah, that's, imagine when people accept a worldview that says, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Love them, love your enemies, pray for those who hurt you. Things like that. Imagine if everybody thought that way. What a great society it would be. And he's like, yeah, that'd be great. It's like, whew. Anyway, so this primitive culture, you can imagine how it gets affected when you have 1,000 migrants a day wander into their village. And that's what happened in Canaan Membrillo. It got to the point where there were more than 1,000 migrants a day coming in from all over the world, bringing diseases they'd never seen, bringing cultural things that they had never seen. And it was a real eye-opener for those people, but it also started to really damage their culture. And now what you're seeing are the young people there, they're getting tattoos, they're getting body piercings, they're turning their hair blue, they're robbing the migrants, they're raping the women out in the jungle, things like that. And it's a real big problem. But all that said, the village is making tons and tons of money selling goods and services to the migrants. That's not necessarily a good thing for that village. If you go watch the video I put up earlier today, that it was kind of a walkthrough of the village, what you'll see is that the typical housing or the traditional housing there is a thatched roof hut made of bamboo up on stilts to get away from the bugs. It's open, most of it's open. There's very little privacy as far as they don't really care because they run around naked anyway. And it's that's their traditional building process. Thank you, Celan. I appreciate that. Very kind. Now what you're starting to see, they're building Cape Cods out there, like actual, stick-built houses with windows and solar panels and air conditioning and stuff like that, generators. Problem is, what happens when the flow of people dries up for one reason or another? It doesn't even have to be that they stop coming. It could be that they find a better route and they just go to a different place. It could be that Panama puts a road through there and they don't have to stop there anymore. All these people who have gotten away from farming and fishing are starting to forget how to do it. That knowledge is slowly starting to be forgotten. And so it will be very difficult for them to go back to that. And of course, their standard of living has come way up. And so it'll be very difficult and cause a lot of unrest for them to have to go back to their traditional way of life. Why do I bring that up? Well, the title of this is, should we help these migrants? What I'm trying to point out is that when the migrants are helped, it's a 4,000-mile journey from South America up to the United States. So they have to get help to make it because they can't walk all that way. And there are lots of obstacles in their path. And so the only way that they actually make it is through the help of benevolent parties. But when they get helped to do this, there are second and third order effects along the way that maybe people didn't think about, maybe people didn't plan for. Maybe people are getting hurt because of the flow of migration. But are the migrants themselves being hurt? Now, again, remember, keep in mind that these people are voluntarily coming to the United States. And so there's always a push factor and a pull factor. The push factor being what pushes them out of the place that they're fleeing. So if it's Venezuela, it's because their economy collapsed. If it's Haiti, it's because it's a failed state. If it's Somalia, it's because it's a failed state. Whatever. That's the push factor that gets them to leave their home country. But what's the pull factor that pulls them from the first safe country like Colombia or Brazil or Ecuador or someplace like that and pulls them all the way up to the United States? Is it that the United States is the only place on earth that you could actually make a life? I'm always amazed and surprised at how many Americans actually think that way. Because they haven't traveled much, they haven't seen much of the world, they do actually think, some people do actually think that, well, of course, America, oh, wow, that's the only place worth living. Well, believe it or not, you can make a pretty good life in many countries around the world. You can make a pretty good life in Mexico. Do you know there are 3 million Americans in Mexico making a pretty good life for themselves? There are 50,000 Americans here in Panama, and I've got a pretty good life here. You can, of course, if you've got money, you can make a life anywhere. But these people, remember, the standard that they're starting from, like Haiti, is like $1 a day. So $2 a day would be a doubling in their standard of living. $10 a day would be like winning the lottery for them. And they can make $20 a day in Panama. They can make $50 or $60 a day in Ecuador, Chile, Peru. They can make 50 or 60 bucks a day in Mexico. So they don't need to come to the United States to get a much better standard of living from the one that they're fleeing. But if you're just fleeing to a better standard of life, you're not actually an asylum seeker, because asylum is a very specific thing. Asylum is, my government is persecuting me because I live in Russia, or I live in China, or I live in North Korea, someplace like that. And my government is trying to murder me or put me in prison, and I'm fleeing for my life. That's asylum. Nothing else really qualifies. I live in a high crime neighborhood, doesn't qualify. Sorry, moved to a different neighborhood. Yeah, there are some very high crime neighborhoods in El Salvador, for example, that are run by the gangs. But I've been to El Salvador several times, and there are actually some very nice places in El Salvador. And so if you live in El Salvador, you could actually move to a different city and get away from the high crime neighborhood and go somewhere out in the country, go somewhere nicer. Same thing in Guatemala, same thing in Nicaragua, same thing in Panama or Mexico. Heck, you could probably do that in Cuba. So just coming, the pull factor that brings them to the United States is primarily economic, because we have the highest wage. We pay the highest wages of any place in the Western Hemisphere. So people come for more money. They may have already been making 50 bucks a day in Chile or Ecuador for years, and many of them have been. But they've decided that they're going to come to the United States now because they can make more money there. And that's the reason they've decided to make this trek. So when I run into them in the Darian Gap and they're coming out and they're like, please, I'm broke, I've got no money, I'm dying. Oh, I have to remember, hey man, you volunteered for this, dude. You didn't have to do this. So, and if you're dragging your little kid with you, I feel sorry for that kid, but I don't feel sorry for you. As a matter of fact, I kind of loathe you for abusing your child that way, dragging him through the jungle. So I want to show you an interview that I did with an Iranian man in the jungle camp called Las Blancas just 2 days ago. I want you to listen to what this guy says and pay attention to how many countries he's been to before, and if any of those countries he could have made a decent living in. Listen to this. Pathway. Tell me. Yeah, you start in Iran.
I start in Iran and Istanbul, Turkish, and I goes to Cuba, Havana. Havana goes to Venezuela, Colombia, Darian Forest. Darian Forest come here.
To Panama. And now to the United States.
Now.
And where you
continue for
last place you want to stop?
Last place.
No. Where do you want to go in the United States?
In the LA.
You want to go to LA?
In Los Angeles.
Okay, and maybe 2 more weeks, or
1 month. Maybe more, because I don't have money now.
Oh, okay. How much time did you spend in Europe?
10 years.
So tell me where you were in Europe.
Work.
Oh,
I work for barbershop, you know.
oh really?
Yeah.
Okay, and where were you in Europe? Where?
Where I
Where,
do
no,
not
where did you live in Europe?
in the Finland, I live in the first country, Finland, Germany, and Netherlands.
In Netherlands.
Yeah.
And then left and went back to Iran.
Back to Iran, 5 months. I've been in Iran. I saw do not home and anything, and
You start over.
I start this way
How,
for
it's
find.
expensive. How did you get money to come here?
I take money for before I save money little bit
Oh,
for this way. 2,000, 3,000, not expensive.
how much?
3,000.
10?
3,000.
Oh, 3,000. 3,000.
Not
Okay.
so much.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, so you heard the man there. He's from Iran. He left his country, understandably so. I get it. I would want to leave Iran too. And then he went to Finland. And he lived in Finland for 10 years. He made a living, did fine. Then he decided to go home and visit his family in Iran. And he, now he see, because he's illegal, he can't just easily go right back to Finland. He's going to have to go through the whole process again of illegally emigrating all the way across Europe to get to Finland. And he figured, well, if I'm going to, go all that far, I might as well just go to the United States because I can make even more money in the United States. Now, one of the things you didn't hear there that was very interesting about that guy is that he said that he had become a Christian in Finland. He got to Finland and he ran into some Christians there and was very struck by the mercy of the gospel. Islam is not a merciful religion, and he had decided to become a Christian. That unfortunately did not stop him from thinking that it would be just fine for him to break the law by going across 12 other countries to get to the United States. And he said that it took him, he had to raise $3,000 for the journey. So he said, not so much, not so much. Now, how many of you could come up with $3,000 to take a trip to Iran? Think about that. So, this is what we see over and over and over again. People who just simply, somebody's handing out cookies and they want to get in line for the cookies. And frankly, I don't blame them. I like cookies as much as the next guy. I like money. If somebody said, you can do the same job you're doing right now, but if you would just climb across a barbed wire fence into Canada, you could make $1 million a year doing it, why not? I'll go to Canada, right? So it's the pull factor that brings people across a dozen countries that are perfectly fine and safe that in order to get into the United States. So what are those pull factors? Well, things like free health care. You might go, wait a minute, I don't have free health care. Well, migrants do because they can't turn you away. In most countries around the world, if you show up to the hospital and you've got a gash in your hand, you pay before they let you in the door. They have a list and they say gash in the hand, $5. You pay your $5 and they let you in. That's how it is here in Panama. We've actually done that with friends before. You have to pay at least something before they'll even look at you. And if you don't have money, you lay out there on the sidewalk and bleed. That's how it goes. But in the United States, we don't let people lay out on the sidewalk and bleed. We'll take them in and we have to treat them one way or the other. But there are so many people coming here that have no intention whatsoever of actually paying for any of that kind of thing, that it's almost like going to Disneyland for them. Hey, let's go to the hospital. This is amazing. I got the sniffles. We're going to go to the hospital and they'll just treat us and we don't have to pay. It's incredible. I have a brother-in-law who is a doctor that works at a medical care thing. What do you call those places? Med Express kind of thing. And he says, I like working there because we don't have to treat the illegal immigrants. We can send those guys to the hospital. The hospital can't turn them away. We can because we're private. And the hospitals are going broke. Just do a Google search. There are hospitals that are literally going bankrupt all around the country because of all the migrants that they have to treat who don't pay. That raises the cost of care for everybody else. And in some cases, it overwhelms the hospital and crushes them. Question, do you think some people lie about being Christian to get benefits or money? Absolutely. I think many people, I can read the question, but Denise, I can't read your name. I've seen this a lot around the world. Whenever you have a lot of short-term missions, like in places like Haiti, even here in Panama. Panama is a very heavily missioned place, especially in this valley where I live, because it's up in the mountains, it's beautiful, it's safe, it's tranquil, it's peaceful, it's cheap, and it's close to the United States. So people aren't afraid to let their teenagers go on spring break to come here on a quote-unquote mission trip. They come and they pretty much do the same thing over and over. They do a day of beach ministry where we go to the beach and we ask people if we can pray for them while we enjoy ourselves. We do a day of service project where we go paint somebody's house, whether they need it or not. And we show the Jesus film and then give a altar call at the end. Anybody want to accept Jesus, raise your hand and we'll give you this t-shirt and we'll come pray with you, whatever. And what happens is people here, the locals, learn that, man, if I say the right things and do the right things, I can get some stuff out of these people. Maybe it's just a t-shirt, but it might be a Bible, which I could go sell and actually make some money out of this deal. So what we end up doing rather than actually making disciples is we end up inoculating people against Christianity with short-term missions. And they just learn to say and do the right things, but they never actually get saved. And that's a tragedy. The church that we used to go to here in our little valley made a habit of bringing in about one mission group a month. And they would do the same thing over and over and over again. It really turned me off because we'd have 40 people on Sundays, 30, 40 people normally. And then when a mission group came to town, 100 people would show up. And you'd see them after church. Most of them are like teenagers, a lot of teenage boys, because we got a lot of cute girls coming down. And they'd be over there macking on all the girls, trying to get themselves an American girlfriend. And unfortunately, there were more than one instance of those guys who ended up getting one of those girls pregnant, believe it or not. So not a good look for a Christian church here. And definitely not very good at discipling people. That's, short-term missions is short-term missions. We call them vacationaries. They're not missionaries, they're vacationaries. And it's not that nothing good could come of that, but it's profanely expensive. The money that 25 people spend to come down here and bring a bunch of unskilled laborers to paint somebody's house could be much better spent if they just sent the money and we could hire people that are unemployed in the neighborhood to do the unskilled labor and actually give them jobs and therefore give them ownership in their own community rather than harming them. This is where that When Helping Hurts comes into play. You can go read that book, When Helping Hurts. It talks about that people have relationships in 4 directions. They have relationships vertically with their God and vertically with themselves, and then horizontally with their environment and their society. And when you give charity to them, what you want to make sure is that you're not damaging any of those 4 things. So I'll give you a great example of that. One time, a group of spring break missionaries came down here, and they wanted to do a service project. So the lady at our church said, well, there's a single mom up the hill. She's got 7 kids. They have a 1-room house. It's about the size of a walk-in closet. They all sleep on one little mattress, and they're always asking for money here at the church. And so maybe we can go help them by painting their house. This was in, like spring break time, April, May. So they very merrily trooped up the mountain and went and gave this bewildered lady, short notice, and then hauled everything out of her house, which wasn't much. Her one mattress that they all slept on, and some pots and pans and clothes and stuff. And then painted the entire house Pepto-Bismol pink. It looked like you just hosed the thing down with Pepto-Bismol, inside and out. And then when it dried, they put everything back and patted her on the head, thank you very much, and we prayed over her, and then they left. I wasn't there for all this, but I heard about it, went up there and saw it later. Well, what these kids didn't know, and the missionary at our church should have known, is that in Panama, it's traditional, especially in these cultures, communities out here in the country, it's traditional to paint your house in November, right before the holidays, before family comes to visit. And because everybody paints their house in November, it's the beginning of the dry season, all the paint goes on sale. So the paint is cheap, super cheap. And so everybody buys paint in November, they paint their house, and they got a fresh coat of paint for the dry season coming up. You don't want to paint your house in the wet season because it'll all wash off and it's cheap paint and it gets moldy and everything anyway, right? So November is the time to paint your house. If you paint your house any other time of the year, especially in April or May, which is after the beginning of the wet season, it's like an ostentatious display of wealth. Like, I am so stupid rich. I can buy paint when it's not on sale and paint my house in the middle of the wet season, even though it's going to be moldy in about 2 months. Ha! And it's like an in-your-face display of wealth. Well, guess what? That poor lady, the next time she went to her neighbor because she didn't have any food in her house, her neighbor said, why are you asking me for food? Why don't you go ask your rich gringo friends? You got enough money to paint your house in April. Why would you come to me? I don't have money to paint my house in April. Go ask somebody else for food. So we thought they thought they were helping her, but in reality they were harming her. And so you see how that works? Well, this can work the same way for migrants, because if I give a migrant, like there was that Iranian guy, for one, many people in the Lajas Blancas camp. Lajas Blancas is not deep in the Darian, it's right next to the road. And these people come out and then they have to come up with $40 for the bus ride to Costa Rica. Well, now it's $60. They have to come up with $60 for the bus ride to Costa Rica. Many of them are flat broke, or they got robbed in the jungle, and so they got nothing. And so they have to figure out a way to get $60. Now, think about that. If you got dropped into a camp on the edge of the jungle with nothing, I mean nothing, like the clothes on your back, how would you come up with $60 to get a bus ride out of there? It's not easy. I was talking to one of the ladies that was in our group, and she said, you know what I'd do? I'd set up a table and I'd start giving massages for $5 a piece. These people coming out of the jungle and they're all knotted up and everything. And some of them have got money. And so I'd go after the Chinese guys and stuff that have money, and I'd give massages for $5 a piece, and I'd be out of here in a day. And I'm like, yeah, well, a lot of these people don't have that kind of ambition. And they just sort of, lay around, and they're not really sure what they should do. And some of them pitch in and try to hire themselves out as porters for the local Panamanians. Some of them just beg. Some of them are able to make a phone call out, but you have to have money to do that if you have just a couple bucks. Maybe you use your couple bucks to call a friend or a family member and get them to wire you money. But so it may take them a few days to even a few months to get out of that camp and get on the bus headed north. And so they're kind of stuck there. Well, so obviously many of those people see a bunch of gringos, and that's the first thing they do. They come over and they start going, please, I'm trying to raise some money. Please help me. I'm so embarrassed. And as a matter of fact, I had two guys from Ethiopia come up to me while I was sitting in our SUV, getting ready to make a phone call. And they spoke English, and they said, I'm so very embarrassed but we have no money and we need to get on the bus, and please, could you please see your way clear to help us? And I felt terrible. I really felt for the poor guys, because I can imagine how hard it would be being in their situation. But I'm not going to help them. I'm sorry. And I told them as much. I said, guys, I'm really sorry, but I just can't. I hate it for you. I wish you all the best, but I can't help you. And they said, well, why not? And I said, because you're breaking the law. You're actually breaking the law. You've come into Panama illegally, and your plan is to go into every country between here and the United States illegally. And I just cannot help you. But my own morality will not allow me to help you break the law. And they said, we understand. And they walked off. Now, that's the way I see it. Now, there are times when I have helped the migrants, and I'll detail two of them for you right now. I will help the migrants if they're literally, if they need medical attention. I've come upon people almost every trip who are in such bad shape medically that they literally could die at any moment. They've got heat stroke. They're dying of thirst. They have trench foot, prickly heat, terrible, terrible bites and stings and things like that. Especially the children, they suffer greatly coming through there. And if they're going to die, then I will intervene to save their lives, and I have on many occasions. The last time we were out there, not this time just 2 days ago, but the last time, you can see it on the videos if you go watch from my podcast from back then, back in August or September, something like that. We went out there, and there was a 16-year-old girl who just passed out. Poof, we were walking by, and she just fell out. She was standing in line to register out there in Bajo Chiquito, out deep in the jungle. And I felt her forehead, hot, dry, very bad, like we're talking internal core temperature, getting to the point where she could have brain damage. And so I picked her up, and I carried her in my arms to the local clinic. There's a tiny little clinic there in Bajo Chiquito run by Doctors Without Borders. And there was a doctor in there, and he had the door chained and padlocked. So I kicked at the door, holding this girl, like, hey, open us up, open up. And he said, no, I'm not going to treat her. I was like, what? She said, she's dying. He said, if I treat her, I got to treat everybody out here. And there's thousands of people here. I'll get overrun. I can't treat her. And how cynical is that? And I said, open this door or I'm breaking it down. And if you won't treat her, I will. So he sighed and rolled his eyes, and he came and opened the door. And then he packed his stuff up and he walked out. He left. He said, I'm out of here. I can't do this. And he just walked off. And we brought her in, sat her down, cooled her off, and gave her something to drink. I went and got an apple from somewhere and gave her an apple to eat. She threw it up. But we got her out of the red zone and got her feeling a little bit better until she was, probably going to survive. While we were there, another man came in that had heat stroke so bad he was literally stroking. He was literally had a stroke. And he, his face was all doing that kind of thing. And he was like having a heart attack. And so we brought him in. We just dumped cold water all over him, got a fan on him, started cooling him off, put ice on his jugular veins to keep his brain from boiling. And after about 30 minutes, he got where he was not stroking anymore, but he was in need of serious medical attention. That guy was probably brain damaged, and I don't know if he died or not, but we worked on him until he was out of the woods as best we could, and then moved on. We treated several people while we were there. I get it. The poor guy from Doctors Without Borders, I was pretty mad at him at the moment, but he's right. If you treat virtually everybody coming out of the jungle, if they were in the United States, would be immediately sent to the emergency room. And those people, they don't have enough doctors to treat 8,000 people a day or whatever. At that time, about 5,000 people a day were coming into Bajo Chiquito, which is another Indian village of 400. So imagine a village of 400 people with no water. They don't have running water or electricity out there. This is a primitive village out in the jungle. And you got 5,000 people a day coming in, and there's no toilet facilities for them. They're just, defecating all over the place. And so you can imagine how horrible that was. It's a very bad problem. Now, the right thing to do would be, if you wanted to help them without helping them, you know what I mean? Help them without facilitating their continued trek north. What you would do is you would just go out there and you would hand out ice water to them when they came in. To keep them from dying, hand out some, like Gatorade, or hand out a packet of electrolytes just to keep them alive, keep them from dying in the heat. But even that, the fact that people die on the route keeps many people from coming. And the fewer people die, the more people come. And the more people come, the more people die. Do you see what I'm saying? If you feed the ducks, you get more ducks. Point, period, end of story. So anything you do that helps these people in any way is going to result in more people coming and more people paying the price in misery. And you might as well just go to your neighbor in the United States and steal $100 from him. Because anything you do to help the people in the jungle or anywhere else along the pipeline is going to result in more people coming. And that's a conundrum. Because I, for one, just can't stand there and watch somebody die in front of me. I've got to help them if they're dying and I could save their life. I wouldn't be a human if I could just watch people die. But even the small help that I give, just keeping them alive, treating their bloody feet, keeping them from getting septic, even that, it makes it just that much easier and means that many more people will come and that many more people will be a burden to the people in the United States. And so I'm in a way, even by helping them survive, I'm costing my fellow Americans money. And I'm costing them money because I'm assisting a criminal on his journey north. Now, does that mean that we should just pull out a gun and shoot all those people? Well, I guarantee you if they did that, then the flow would stop. A more humane way of doing that would be if Panama would just say, if you come into our country illegally, you will stay in the Darian Gap in a camp in that, thank you, dear, in a camp in that miserable jungle. You will stay there until, for 1 year, let's say. You'll stay there for a year, and then we'll let you continue your journey. Well, nobody wants to live in the Darian Gap for a year, I promise you that. And the flow would stop like that. We know that's the case because that's what happened in COVID. When COVID hit, Panama said, if you come into our country illegally across the Darian Gap, you will stay in the camp in the Darian Gap until COVID is over, probably a year. And immediately the flow dried up to nothing. They stopped coming. Just the simple act of President Trump instituting Title 42 and saying, if you want to apply for asylum in the United States, you got to remain in Mexico until your asylum claim is heard. That could be 2 or 3 years. People quit coming. It dried up. So you don't have to be inhumane to stop the flow. You just have to remove that pull factor. And they'll stop. They'll stop. Now, keep all that in mind as we look at this next topic here. There's a organization that's called Welcome Corps. Welcome Corps. Look at this. Welcome Corps. Sponsoring refugees, strengthening communities. This is an organization that is paid for by the U.S. taxpayer through the U.S. State Department. And it encourages people like you and me, regular citizens, to take migrants into our homes and pay for them ourselves so that the government doesn't have to pay for them anymore. They don't have to use your taxes. They can just tax you directly by having them move in with you. And you can pay for all that stuff. So that's what this Welcome Corps is all about. And it is funded by our tax dollars. So this is the next big thing. This is the next great idea the United States has. And there are some churches that are signing up for this. Now, look, again, once a migrant makes it into the United States, the damage is done. And it might, you could actually probably make a case that it would be more cost effective for people to take these refugees into their own homes and pay for them themselves rather than pay for them with their tax dollars. Because we all know that the overhead of the U.S. government, the government's not very efficient, right? And the overhead, they say, of the U.S. government is about 40%, meaning for every dollar they collect in taxes, only 60 cents actually makes it out to any kind of program. And if that's the case, and those programs are helping migrants like SNAP benefits, welfare benefits, things like that, or even the U.S. Border Patrol, then there's an automatic 40% drain on our resources because of the inefficiency of the U.S. government. So it would be more efficient if rather than tax you and pay for the migrants, they could get you to just pay for the migrants yourself directly. It would theoretically be cheaper for all of us if we all did that. But if we do it, if we build it, they will come. More and more and more people will come. And so we won't actually end up making it cheaper on America because there will be many millions more who will come specifically because we made it easier. And therefore, it's not helpful, it's not beneficial for America for us to do this. And there are a lot of churches that are signing up for this program, this Welcome Corps program. They highlight some of them on their website. Maranatha Church that takes in all these migrants and helps them out. I mean, I get it. You're supposed to help your fellow man. But if you're helping your fellow man at the expense of your neighbor, then you're not really helping, you're hurting. What I mean is, if by you helping your fellow man by taking them into your home is directly causing more people to come, which will then cost your neighbors money in their taxes, reduce the quality of the services that all of your neighbors can take advantage of, the education, the healthcare, all that, then your generosity to these illegal immigrants is indirectly costing your neighbors money. And I would call that a sin. I would also call it a travesty. So well-meaning churches wanting to help their fellow man, you can see how they can go through these machinations in their brain to say, well, these people are in the United States already, we'll help them out. I have bought migrants after they got into the United States, bought them a meal. And I did that because I had been tracking them all the way from Panama up through the United States. And when they got to where I was, then I bought them a meal because I wanted to keep track of them and I wanted to, maintain our relationship. And there is a case to be made for the simple fact that I bought them a meal made it that much easier for them to be here. And that making it easier for them to be here means that they will call their friends and relatives back home and say, this is great, people are nice, they just buy us food and it's great, so come on. I've heard them make those calls. I went and visited a migrant detention facility where they were keeping children, unaccompanied minors, at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. They kept them in the basic training barracks. They kicked some soldiers out of the barracks and opened the barracks up and put kids in there that are unaccompanied minors. And I got a tour of the facility, and they showed how they were giving the kids phone calls to call their families. And I spoke Spanish, so I could listen to those phone calls and know what they were actually saying. And they were saying, Mom, Dad, it's amazing. We get hot showers. I've never had a hot shower in my life before. This is incredible. They're feeding us 3 times a day. We only eat 1 time a day at home. This is great. Mom, send Paco, send Jose. Tell them, hurry, get up here before this thing closes. Free education. Church programs that will pay them money. Give them food for free. They don't get that in their home country. All of those things only encourage more people to come. You feed the ducks, you get more ducks. So is Welcome Corps a good idea? Absolutely not. It's not. Unfortunately, the rule should be, if you're going to come to our country, until you are at least a green card holder, at least a resident, you cannot take advantage of any programs. Okay, churches maybe let's set those aside. Churches maybe can help, but you cannot take advantage of any federal funds, any tax money at all, because we can't keep encouraging more of them to come. And that's what we're doing. All right, folks, if you have any questions, let me go through and read some of these comments real quick. And I really appreciate the donations here. Those actually make a big difference. They enable us to help people. They enable us to keep doing this reporting, to not be so beholden to the networks who want me to go here or there, but I can go where I want to go where you want me to go. And so thank you for the donations. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. That if you'd like to donate there, you can, or you can go to the link tree, which is in the bio of my YouTube channel, linktr.ee/Holton. If you go there, there are links to PayPal and Venmo and Cash App and all those places. And if you would like to support what I'm doing directly, you can go to chuckholton.com and you can subscribe there on Locals and can get subscriber-only content. You can get articles and other things I put up there, access to lots of cool stuff. So go to chuckholton.com and subscribe over there. I really appreciate the people who do. It does help a lot. Yeah, we got all these veterans that could use help, but maybe we ought to focus more on that. I'm not saying that the people who come here are not human beings and that they don't deserve any help at all, but I'm just pointing out the function of how illegal migration works. When people come illegally, they cost you and me money. And when we help those people that are here illegally, it costs all of us more money. Question, when will you give an update on Israel? Probably tomorrow. I'm kind of, the things that are happening, it's not that there isn't anything happening. It's just that it's kind of more of the same of what's been happening. So I'll probably give an update tomorrow on Israel. And so stay tuned for that. And as I told you before, I did a whole kind of rant about this when we were in Cartagena this week, because people were saying, we should never help anybody that's not American. Please don't hear me saying that. That is not what I'm saying. People have inherent dignity and worth, and we should help as many people as possible. When people are in front, when people are in front of us, the people God puts in front of us, we should help. But this is a special case, and that's the reason I wanted to do a whole podcast about it. Because if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I believe in helping the people that God puts in front of us. And so if I'm in Cartagena, Colombia, God puts people in front of me, then I'm going to help them. The women that you all helped in Colombia last week, We specifically chose them to help because by helping them in Colombia, we are helping them avoid becoming illegal migrants. We're helping them stay in Colombia and make a living and not come to the United States and become a drain. So in that way, we're helping Americans, American taxpayers, because we're keeping people from becoming wards of the American system. And it's much, much cheaper. For just a few $100s, we can get them started in a business in Colombia, and they don't have to come to the United States. They don't have to drag their children through the Darian Gap and abuse their children in that way. And they feel like they have hope where they are. So helping people where they are, I am all about that. But in the very specific case of helping people who are illegally journeying to the United States, then I don't believe we should help those people. But you're never going to hear me say, America first, last, and only. Nope. I don't believe that. I believe that we should be very generous in helping people who are not in America, specifically so that they won't come to America. It's much, much cheaper to do that than it is to have people trek 4,000 miles, face all the dangers, pay off the cartels, get into the United States, and become wards of the state. Because the state in America is you and me, right? So here's a question from the Darian Gap. How was the river run? Leaving out of the Darian Gap, it was 27 miles downriver, and it was much faster because we were going with the current. And it was beautiful. It was the golden hour. Everything came out. There were birds like you've never seen before. There were monkeys everywhere. There were crocodiles and kingfisher, birds that were fishing. There were fish jumping out of the water. It was heavenly, and it was much cooler because the sun was going down. Hang on, I got to let Bobo out. He's stuck in here, and my daughter's little dog is crying at the door. So it was wonderful. I was very glad to get out of the jungle this week. So next week, I will probably be going either to Ecuador or to Guyana. I'm waiting on the word about that. And either one of those will be a very interesting trip. And then I'll be working. Somebody else just asked that, when are you going to do an update on Israel? Probably tomorrow. CND 1965, probably tomorrow. Israel tomorrow, okay? And all right, well, thank you very much. Yes, Rosemary, I know you have a terrible illegal immigrant problem in the UK. I went and reported on that last year in August. I went to, where did I go? Calais, France, and reported on that. I actually did help some of the migrants in Calais, France, a little bit. Not so that they could get to the UK, but so that they could survive in Calais. They were being prohibited from going to the UK, and I didn't give them any money because I'm not going to give them money to go buy a boat or pay to get on a boat to go to the UK. But I did buy them a pizza so that they would sit around and talk to me and share with me what it's like being a migrant from South Sudan in France. And it was fascinating. If you haven't seen that, you should go back and find it here. So, yeah, probably we'll be going to Ecuador or Guyana. Connie wants to go with me to Guyana. She probably won't go with me to Ecuador. It is pretty hot in Ecuador right now. And so until I get a better sense of what it's like on the ground, I'm not going to have my wife there. But I probably won't stay long either. I'm going to stay as little time as possible just to get the story, and we'll see what happens. So both of them very interesting stories. What do you think of Runak's Rwanda repatriation proposal? Peter, that was amazing. Unfortunately, nobody would go. What he's talking about is the UK got this idea that they would build beautiful apartment complex communities in Rwanda and then send all the migrants that came to the UK, put them on a plane, send them to Rwanda, pay for them to live there and not pay for them to live in the UK. They figured out it would be much cheaper that way, and nobody would go. The first group they put on the plane to go to Rwanda, the migrants tried to commit suicide. One of them ate a whole tube of foot cream or something, and they rioted basically and would not go because they had just come from Africa, and they would be darned, they would rather die than go back to Africa, even if it was to get a free house and get all your expenses paid in Rwanda. They were not going back to Africa. So that didn't work out. Instead, they come up with this idea. Yes, they are still, Yvonne, they are still housing kids at Fort Sill, as far as I know. And they are very, very secretive about getting in there. It was we couldn't bring cameras. We couldn't even bring a pad of paper to write with. We couldn't bring video or recording equipment of any kind, and we had to stay with the guides that took us through there and only look at the things that they told us we could look at. Well, I actually, as we were walking down a hallway, there was an open door, and I just kind of slowed down and looked through the door like that, and they got very mad at me. Whoa, 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 you can't look in there, you can't look in there. And I was like, give me a break, man. They couldn't talk to the kids, and they were very angry when I listened in on the phone call and then told the other journalists what was said, because they didn't think any of us spoke Spanish. It was like very, very communist kind of thing, really messed up. I was really disgusted when I got out of there. This is not what freedom of the press looks like. They had guys in brown, literally in brown shirts, that were following us around, threatening us if we, did anything. I told one of the journalists, I said, "Oh, up here around the corner is the chow hall," and this brown shirt was like, "How do you know that? How do you know there's a chow hall there? Did you go up there and sneak in?" What? I'm like, dude, I went to basic training in a building exactly like this. I know every door in this whole place, And they were very angry that I could read the things on the walls, and it was just like it was messed up. It was messed up. But anyway, so that's the explanation I have for you. I'm going to go now. So we're over an hour and 15 minutes, so we've gone a little long today. And God bless you all. Thank you very much for watching the podcast. And I'm very grateful for every one of you. Please go subscribe at chuckholton.com. And I'll be on talking about Ukraine on CBN's YouTube tomorrow. Before that, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and pray. That's always a good way to end any podcast. So pray with me, would you? Lord, I just pray that you would give us wisdom every time that we're confronted with an opportunity to help somebody. I pray that you would help us to know how to help that person in a way that would not harm them or anybody else. It is so easy, Lord, to just throw money at things, but very often money is the worst possible thing we could do. Thank you that we can always pray for people, and that is the best thing we can do in every circumstance, no matter what we're faced with. Help us to have the courage to pray for people around us. Help us have the courage to just put our hands on people and show them that we love them because you love them and you sent us to them. And maybe by praying for them, Lord, you can intervene in a way that is helpful to them without harming anybody else. So thank you for your promise that you can make good things out of even the worst circumstances. And thank you for your promise to give us wisdom when we ask. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, folks. God bless you. Thanks again. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.